Hello guys, hope you are doing great today. Today we'll be discussing about container services in AWS. There are basically, or the services, there are a lot of services, but the most popular services, um, container services in AWS are AWS Fargate, AWS ACS, and AWS EKS. So I know most of my friends, uh, uh, they are mostly confused about uh, the name like containers, what are containers and how they are used. And if you study, especially going for AWS CCP exam, cloud practitioner, or AWS solution architect exam, you will most commonly hear these terms most often when you are studying about containers. Um, and uh, so before starting learning about all those three services, let's discuss what are containers. Containers. Let's study what are containers. So uh, let's say we have an uh, application. We are creating an application. Let's say payment service. Payment services like Paytm, PhonePe, right? So if somebody wants to send money to somebody else, then they will use our service. So while creating any application, let's say service or any other application, any other major application, for completing our task, let's say give service to people, we need to fulfill lots of small tasks. We usually call it microservices. Like we need to uh, we do have one task like authentication, one task like adding partners to our site, adding third parties to our site, uh, or adding banks to our site, and lot of their small microservices. And one more thing is that those micro services can scale time to time. Let's say if PhonePe wants to scale up their application, they want to introduce some new feature, then they will continuously adding new microservices, and uh, they will be up to date, right? They will any application or any company which is doing their magic, if they want to survive in market, they need to add new features continuously. So we do a lot of microservices, but what happens is that um, in AWS or in world, we have EC2. We do have EC2 instances, which are virtual instances, like our standalone. You can say standalone computer, but that's virtual entity. So we do have virtual machines. You can um, call it as virtual machines. So we need to install all these services, all those microservices to those virtual instances. But what the issue is that we cannot directly install lot of microservices to only one EC2 instance. We should take help of containers. You can say these are mediators. These are required to run all different microservices services independently, right? So we So for installing these microservices on any virtual machine, we need the help of containers. Like say for this microservice one, MS1 microservice one, we need container one. For MS2 we need container two. Or there might be some container which can run more than one microservice. So guys, the another concept that we should know is serverless. Serverless. So what is serverless? Uh, So we have studied about, or we have heard about EC2. As we have discussed, these are nothing but these are the virtual machines that runs in AWS infrastructure. So uh, if we use EC2 instances, we should concern about everything. About there might be some windows, so we should take care of patching activities. We should take care of resources. We should take care of RAM, how much RAM is being utilized, and we should means we should control or monitor the all the this machine continuously, whether this is running fine or not, or is all the services are running properly or not. So in serverless, all those things that we have mentioned, we have discussed, those all those things will be taken care by AWS. Okay, we don't need to worry about patching activity. We don't worry about its RAM structure. All those things will be taken care by AWS, and we only need to focus on our core application. Mm, let's say what we have discussed is payment, our main core application like payment application that we are preparing, and we don't need to worry about the underlying uh, machine or underlying infrastructure that AWS is using, that will be taken care by AWS. So these are the advantages of serverless. This is what serverless in AWS. Now let's start uh, discussing about Fargate. The well-known containers these days are Docker. Now, what is AWS Fargate? AWS Fargates are serverless compute engines for containers. So, we have studied about what the serverless is. Serverless is nothing, just where we are not using independent EC2 machines. So, these are serverless compute engines used for containers. Fargates allows you to manage containers like Docker, and these Dockers are the leading technology being used in current days. Fargate, Fargate actually works with Amazon ECS. We will discuss about this service, Elastic Container Service, and these scales automatically. These are their main advantages. This scales automatically um, because we are not using EC2 virtual machines here. We are using this is the complete service provided by AWS, and they take care of everything. If you need to scale your application, just put your requirement, and this will scale automatically as per the requirement. So we already discussed serverless means we don't worry about provisioning, configuring, and scaling servers. And this actually removes the need for you to interact with or think about servers and clusters. So all those things will be managed by AWS only. Now, what are ECS and EKS? So what we'll be studying here about the comparison between two as well, and ECS versus Fargate, EC2 versus Fargate. We will also study about ECR, Elastic Compute Registry. So before studying these things, we should know the main concept about orchestration of containers. So what is orchestration of computers? Let's say we have multiple microservice applications running, and for there can be many microservices. Um, so suppose there are a lot of microservices for use for our application. Let's say for our payment gateway system, and hence we ends up creating a lot of containers, and this can scale further as the need arises. This is a continuous process. So deploying to AWS, and then we need to deploy all those containers to AWS infrastructure. Now what next? We need to uh, as we have discussed earlier while studying about containers. So we need to deploy all these containers to EC2 instances, which already have Docker installed on them. So what challenges we will face while managing our containers? See guys, there is no centralized place to check how many containers are not working anymore, right? So if we have one EC2 machine, let's say um, if there is one EC2 machine is there, and there are a lot of containers running here. So if if any container stops running, we should there is no central place where we get to know about how many containers are not working. And in EC2 instance, as we are managing the EC2 instance by ourselves, so how many resources are still available? We don't know how much RAM is left, how much resources that we can run now, uh, how many containers, how many resources are still available, and how many containers we can add more, right? Um, if any container is not working, how to remove unused or stopped containers. Can we schedule another container? If resources are available in a EC2 instance, can we schedule any more containers here? So these are the challenges that we will be facing. So here comes there are several tools to do all these functions, and what we call is that call all those tools it's container orchestration tools. The features of container orchestration tools are managing, scaling, and deploying containers to EC2 instances. So these things will be taken care by container orchestration tools, and these are fully automated by these tools. Means uh, these are helpful, and this removes the use. This removes the drawbacks that we have studied here. Uh, using these tools, it will be very easy to manage our containers. You can say like that. So the most popular orchestration tool used in today's is Cur- Cur- Kubernetes, and for less complex applications or smaller applications, we are using Docker Swarm, and we have Apache Mesh. Mesos also being used these days. Node also there. So there are a lot of container services. You just need to um, know about those things. There is no need to go in much deep for um, CCP and solution architect exam. And there is one more container orchestration tool is ECS. This is our This is provided by our AWS, so that we need to study and how this works. So friends, let's understand the concept of ECS. So ECS is Container Orchestration Service. It manages the complete life cycle of containers. Previously, we see the challenges uh, uh, while managing these containers. So all those challenges were being covered by Container Orchestration Service. ECS is also uh, one among these services, and this service is provided by AWS. So it manages the complete life cycle of containers, start of container. If we want to reschedule any work that has been done, or to schedule some uh, different microservice running, so we can also manage the load balancers. Now, how does ECS works? Or we can also understand like how to run containerized any containerized application cluster on AWS. Let's say, uh, uh, as the example that we are taking in this session is payment gateway. So, how to run payment gateway application that makes the use of containers um, on AWS. So, guys, we have ECS plus. So we have lot of microservices, one, two, three, and all those microservices are running on some containers. So in ECS, for managing all those microservices, we first create the ECS cluster. This cluster we manages all the services that are embedded with particular containers, and we have also a control panel plan um, for managing all these containers and microservices. So this is what comes where we have studied about the orchestration features. So uh, we have control plan in ECS that give us all those features uh, that will be controlled by control plan. And one more thing is that all those containers will again run on some EC2 instances. So we need to create EC2 instance separately, and uh, where all those containers will be running. Now, this is with AWS Fargate. Till now, we were creating our own EC2 instance for hosting containers. But now, even this task will be monitored or controlled fully by AWS. And the service name is AWS Fargate that we have already discussed um, in the same session. So now we are delegating. Let me open my marker here. So yeah, so now we are delegating infrastructure management also to AWS, and we already discussed and understand that this AWS Fargate service is serverless, and it's uh, so what AWS manages in AWS Fargate service is container orchestration and EC2 instance. So we already know all those things. So how does AWS Fargate works? This is interesting. So we do have AWS Fargate service, and we will give our container. We will provide our container to AWS Fargate. Now AWS Fargate will decide uh, how much it will decide, or it will analyze how much resources are needed to run and needed to be utilized for this container, or to run this container. How much resources or CPU utilization is required to properly run this container that we have provided to AWS Fargate. And after analyzing all those things, the resources required and the CPU utilization needed, AWS Fargate will automatically arrange EC2 instance, and this all those things will be properly managed by AWS. We don't need to bother about anything. All those things will be taken care by AWS. So this is AWS Fargate, and this is how it works. So uh, how the pricing structure works in this. Also, EC2 instance pricing, when we are using ECS with EC2 instance, so we call it pay for whole server. Uh, the pricing cost for the whole server, and AWS Fargate pricing are depends on how long we use that container and how much capacity is required to run that container. How much microservices are running depends on our container capacity. So the pricing in AWS Fargate depends only on these two features, and it will be very less as compared to pricing for hiring, renting the whole EC2 instance or the whole server. Now, Fargate pricing is just like will be priced for only for what we use. Now ECS with Fargate and EC2, as both the services are AWS owned services. Um, these are both AWS services, so these can be integrated with all the other AWS services, um, uh, or we can say other AWS services other than container services. So, like we can integrate it with CloudWatch for monitoring purpose. We can integrate it for IAM for user permissions. We can integrate ECS Fargate and ECS with EC2 with ELB Elastic Load Balancer for balancing load, and for VPC, virtual private cloud for networking. EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service. This is the other service alternative to ECS. This is most popularly used with the organizations that are already using Kubernetes as a tool, and they want to move to AWS infrastructure, and then it's more better, I will suggest that they go for EKS, because EKS provides most of the functionality of Kubernetes, and it will be very easy for them to migrate if they are already using Kubernetes. Kubernetes, we have already discussed, it is one of the most popular orchestration tool for managing containers. And you can see here, like Kubernetes manages containers at 69% of the organization survey. So in an organization, we have found that it's captured the market. Mostly market is captured by Kubernetes. Uh, we can say it is well and much developed, and we can take use of all the services used by Kubernetes if we use EKS, cloud Amazon EKS. So when to use Amazon EKS? First, if we want to use Kubernetes cluster on AWS and its alternative to ECS. Uh, the difference or the comparison is EC2 and ECS is explained here. It is very important to know the difference because when any organization should go for EKS or when any organization should go for ECS. So um, both the services they have a very, we can say, not exactly same but common uh, architecture how they work. So the control plan is is it is used in both those services and which manages the containers. In case of EKS, if we are already using the Kubernetes, we will go for EKS, and ECS is, we can say, more specific to AWS. Kubernetes is open source, and Kubernetes is much easier to migrate to another platform, any cloud platform. If we have any application already built in Kubernetes EKS, we can easily migrate it to some other platform later on if we decide to move away from Amazon, EC, AWS. And but in case of ECS, the migration, I will say we will face a lot of problems and difficulties. It's not very easy to migrate because EKS is already using Kubernetes, which is most popular service, and which is not even managed by, which is not created by Amazon. It's a totally separate entity. In EKS, we have the feature to use Kubernetes as it is, without doing much changes, and we can easily import. And so this is the reason the migration is very easy in case of EKS. EKS, sorry, ECS should be used by less complex applications that are that usually are small and less complex. And in case of ECS, the control plane is free in comparison to EKS. Migration can be difficult when using other AWS services along with EKS. Like if we are using CloudWatch or some other service integrated or also along with EKS. So the migration will be somewhat difficult, and the EKS, as the Kubernetes is much popular. So Kubernetes already have very large community, and we can make use of those large communities and the already um, lot of configurations and make use of the tools that also used with Kubernetes. We can make use of all those things. We can also take use of the large community, also known as Helm, like Helm chart, etc., which are used with EKS. So there are a lot of features with EKS. How EKS works. So control plan is common in both in cases EKS and in ECS. We have, when we create EKS cluster, those master services, those service nodes will automatically getting created in background, and those will be totally taken care by EKS cluster. We don't manage master services. We only need to create EKS cluster, and then we have worker nodes. Worker nodes is the area where our actual container lies. If we have more than one EC2 instances, we can use kubectl command to deploy uh, containers on more than one instances using this command very easily. Communication between control plane and compute fit. The group of instances, EC2 instances, also known as compute fit. So the communication between EC2 cluster and compute fit. What are the different agents and are required on EC2 sites? Um, so in case of ECS, if you remember, we have Docker agent and ECS agent. Docker agent is used for running the container on EC2 instance, and this ECS instance was used for communication between ECS cluster and our containers, or containers having EC2 instance having containers. This is for communication. And in case of EKS, things are mostly same. Docker agent, we need the Docker agent, or you can say container runtime or Docker runtime. This is for running the container on EC2 instance, and Kubernetes processes as well. These processes are used for the communication in between, for the communication between EKS cluster and the worker nodes, or you can say containers and the master nodes or master services. This process is required for the communication in between master nodes and the EC2 instances. There is just a small difference. In this case, in case of ECS, we have ECS agent. In case of EKS, we have Kubernetes processes running on the EC2 instance in worker nodes. Now there are three ways we can use EKS. EKS with EC2 instance, EKS with node group, EKS with Fargate. If we are using EKS with EC2 instance, this is, we can say, totally managed by us, self-managed. Managed by somebody who is responsible for the containers. So this is totally managed by us. We need to manage worker nodes infrastructure by self. In case of EKS with node groups, we create the groups of worker nodes, or we can say we create the group of EC2 instances, and within that group, if we in future, if we need any more EC2 instances, we need to create any more EC2 instances. We don't need to uh, install Kubernetes processes and Docker agents on every EC2 instance. This will be automatically done by node groups. AWS will create and delete any EC2 instance as well from the worker nodes. But We need to configure everything. We need to configure the containers. We need to configure EKS cluster, everything, right? And there is very little help. This is semi-managed. That's why it's semi-managed, not completely managed. We need to uh, we it can't be configured by itself. Um, Depend on the containers configuration, containers requirement. We need to configure by it by ourselves. But in case of EKS with Fargate, it's fully managed because we already discussed that Fargate is one of the best service or serverless service offered by AWS. And serverless means EC, we don't need to create EC2 instances. Everything will be taken care by Fargate. We just need to give our containers to EKS, and Fargate will create it will take care of everything in background, creating EC2 instance, putting installing containers. So it's fully managed. Now, combination of container services in AWS. We have studied EKS and ECS. In both the cases, EKS can be combined with EC2 with Fargate as well. EC2 ECS as well combined with EC2. We can leverage any service, or ECS can be used with Fargate as well. If we are going for EC2, the complete infrastructure will be managed by us. The in case of Fargate, um, this is different side. We don't need to worry about managing EC2 instances, and so both having their own advantages. It depends on us where we want to go. Now the next topic, and a very small topic, is Elastic Container Registry (ECR). It is nothing, just it's just a repository for Docker images that is used for store and manage uh, or deploy Docker container images. It's alternative to Docker Hub and Nexus. Those are the tools used outside AWS and outside AWS. In case of AWS, we are using ECR, Elastic Container Registry, and it integrates well with other AWS services as well. Okay, guys. Uh, so other AWS services like ECR can integrate. We can integrate ECR with EKS. We can integrate ECR with ECS. So we already studied that ECR is a repository of images or anything that is used for containers. So suppose we have image one here, and if anytime in future we update this image with size 2, then automatically whichever is integrated with ECR, EKS or ECS, the service will pull that image itself and will use the latest version of the image, whether it's EKS or ECS. So this is very good service, we can say, for automatically updating any images for EKS and ECS, um, for managing the latest version of stored images.
Finally, we are done, guys. Thank you for watching. Hope you like this video. Please subscribe and put comments if you still have any confusion or what you didn't like about this video. I will surely try to improve myself in future. Also, you can send me an email uh, which is written here. If you need these handwritten notes, you can send me email on techcloudcybersec@gmail.com. Have a nice day, guys. See you soon in next video.